Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelsey Knox, and I'm a member of the UCSC Alumni Council and one of your Slugs and Steins volunteer organizers. With me tonight is Mike Reapy, also another volunteer organizer. On behalf of the UCSC Alumni Association, I'd like to welcome you to our monthly speaker series, Slugs and Steins, Lectures from UC Santa Cruz. Before we get started this evening, I'd like to read UCSC's land acknowledgement. The land on which UC Santa Cruz is located is the unceded territory of the Awaswas-speaking UP tribe. The Amamutsan tribal band, comprised of the descendants of indigenous people taken to Mission Santa Cruz and San Juan Bautista during Spanish colonization of the Central Coast, is today working hard to restore traditional stewardship practices on these lands and heal from historical trauma. As many of you know, our Slugs and Steins series engages a UCSC faculty member monthly in discussion with all of you, our alumni, friends, and family. We want it to feel just like you're back at UC Santa Cruz, sitting in class, but with a drink in your hand and without an exam at the end. Before we introduce our speaker, we'd like to know where you're joining us from this evening, who you're watching with, and when you graduated. Please take a moment to fill out a short poll that has popped up on your screen, and we will share the results when a majority of them are in. Okay, there we go with the results. So a lot of people in Santa Cruz County and in the Bay Area, California in general, and even a couple from outer space. We have lots of alumni attending tonight from a pretty good range of colleges and a couple of transfer students. Tonight, we are pleased to welcome Distinguished Professor Emeritus John Brown Childs. Professor Childs is Distinguished Emeritus Professor of Sociology at University of California, Santa Cruz. He was born in a public housing project in the Roxbury section of Boston. In 1963, he co-organized a group of students from the University of Massachusetts going to the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, where MLK delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. In 1965, he took part in the civil rights movement in Montgomery, Alabama, as a member of Friends of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. With the community organization Barrios Unidos, he has spent the past 20 years doing volunteer teaching and speaking on peacemaking and transcommunal cooperation in Soledad Prison, where he works with the diverse Cemanahuac One World cultural group of incarcerated men. Of African, Madagascan, and Native American descent, he is, through his mother's side of the family, an enrolled member of the Massachusetts Big Hills community of Indigenous people, after whom the state is named, and on whose tribal land his birthplace, Boston, now sits. In today's Slugs and Steins, Professor Emeritus Childs will discuss courageous, creative compassion and positive transcommunal cooperation among incarcerated men in Soledad Prison. With that, I hope you all have your Steins because I've got your slug, Professor Emeritus John Brown Childs.
Well, thank you very much. I'll say in my own, the tribal language of the Massachusetts Katapatash Netapak. Greetings, thank you, cousins, because we're all cousins, right? We're all related. We're all one people, and that's the way we refer to ourselves. Uh, it's also the way we refer to ourselves in Soledad. We call everyone relations or relatives. We're all relatives. Uh, I'd like to start with a ceremonial greeting to you and for you all. This is the Edge of the Woods ceremony from the Haudenosauunee, or otherwise known as the Iroquois people, of whom I'll say much later because they have had a tremendous influence on what I think and how I see the world and helped me greatly in Soledad and have been received, their ideas have been received well in Soledad Prison. Uh, but this ceremony was designed for people who are traveling and came to a community of others through the woods and came to where the fields began, the agricultural fields. Primarily in the Northeast, that would be corn, beans, and squash with some sunflowers. But the three, what we call the three sisters, corn, beans, and squash. My tribe grew so much corn, we traded it north for fur up to the Abenaki and others up in Maine. By the way, don't let anyone, I do footnotes every now and then, so you have to excuse me. Don't let anyone ever just tell you that Native American people were horticulturalists, gardeners. Nothing wrong with gardening, don't get me wrong. But, we were agriculturalists. We had huge fields before the arrival of the colonists. So in addition to fishing, because we were right on the coast, we also had large agricultural fields and worked those very well. We were a very healthy people through all the foods that we ate. But here's the ceremony. It's called the edge of the woods because you come to the edge of the woods, and then there are the fields, and then there is the village. And in Native American culture, and I don't want to speak generally about anything in one sense, but overall, one doesn't barge into someone else's house, or territory. You stop, announce your presence, say why you're there, and then people respond. And this is the response to those who are coming to a gathering. And this is for all of you who have come here tonight for this gathering. And I compliment you on doing so because I respect and appreciate that you have taken the time to be here. It begins this way. Today we have arrived here at this place, this gathering. Perhaps maybe when you came here on your way here, you traveled through many dangerous areas and places. These things that you went through maybe could have hurt you, but we are thankful that you have arrived safely. Now, sometimes what happens to people when they arrive from different directions, as we have today, perhaps we have experienced great loss in our family. But because of the importance of having our clarity of mind, we say now these words to you. If you have tears today because of a recent loss, today we have brought a soft feather, and we use this to wipe away your tears so that the future will become clearer from this moment forward. Perhaps some dust has accumulated because of your recent travels on difficult trails. Then what we will do is we will take the soft feather and we will wipe away the dust so that your feeling of the world will be restored. And now we will give you pure medicine water for you to drink, to wash away your sadness and fear that might be obstructing your throat so that your voice will be restored, so that your words will be good. And when you start to speak, and sometimes because of grief and distress, the council fire is extinguished. So now tonight, rekindle that fire so that each of us can again work together and care for each other. And now I welcome you. That's the Woods Edge welcome ceremony. I wanted to do that for many reasons because I respect it and I think it is important to welcome people to meetings. Uh, but also because, I'm going to say something now. You all know this. This is a rough and rocky time. It's a rough and rocky road. There's a lot of danger, a lot of perilousness. We're facing some very horrible, hateful moments, and the future of democracy is at stake. And I can see why some people are feeling pessimistic. Um, if I make the mistake of looking at my cell phone at 3 in the morning, I can get kind of pessimistic myself sometimes. Um, but I want to talk about a different kind of phenomenon that's also, I feel, going on. I was at the March on Washington. I helped organize a group of students to go there in 1963. I was born in 42 in that housing project. And Malcolm, by the way, Malcolm X lived about 2 blocks away from where I lived. He was Malcolm Little then. So it was it was a kind of an edgy place. But anyway, we went to Washington for the march there, and I got to hear Martin Luther King, John R. Lewis, many, many other people. And it was a wonderful moment. No doubt about it. A very important moment. We didn't know it, but we didn't know it was going to be historic because you don't know historic moments till afterwards. So we just thought it was a big moment. But I think that today there is a much thicker, richer, more vital, more diverse, and more resourceful foundation of social progress that we are standing on, that we are working on, that we are working with, then existed in 1963 when Martin Luther King gave that speech. There was a lot going on then, and people have been doing things for hundreds of years. So I'm not in any way downplaying that, but I think that foundation is now much, much thicker. It's more diverse. We have much more a better consciousness of the world, of each other, is and the whole sense of diversity and having to work together is so visible, and it wasn't then. Let me just give you two examples of a couple of projects I know about. One is a friend of mine. He's the police chief at Sonoma State University in Haudenosauunee. He was police chief here at UCSC. And he developed a wonderful conversation series called Black and Brown and Blue, in which officers, police officers, law enforcement who are black and brown, talked about their experiences becoming police, what their lives had been like before they became police, what they had been afraid of, what had happened to them, why they chose that profession. And that series, which has brought together people who normally don't talk about those things, and now has expanded to a whole much wider area, uh, is opening up dialogue in a way that we just haven't had before. That's part of this kind of deeper foundation. Here's another example. I work off and on with Heather Rogers, the Santa Cruz County Public Defender, and she asked me one time to speak to the National Association of Public Defenders, which I did. It was a great event, Zoom event, great event. And I asked someone at that Zoom event, when did you come into existence as a national organization? And he said, oh, 23 years ago. This was about 2 years ago this happened. 23 years ago. In other words, when Martin Luther King gave his speech, there was no National Association of Public Defenders. When Martin Luther King gave that speech, black police, brown police were far and few between, and they weren't talking on TV to each other and to the community and talking about community issues and problems. So there's something going on that is very positive that wasn't around before. There's technology that didn't exist before that makes us able to talk with each other and to see each other. I mean, they've been having fun with me because I'm a Selectric typewriter generation person, so I need a lot of help to use this equipment. Nonetheless, consider this. I had a friend, he recently passed away, a wonderful social activist, sociology professor, Hardy Fry, who was in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and he was a field worker for SNCC in Alabama. He worked with churches that had been burned down and blown up by the KKK. There were no phones. I mean, there were no cell phones, that's for sure. And even getting a hold of like a payphone was almost impossible. You had to go to find someone who had a house, who had a phone, if you wanted to call for help. And yet amazingly, people manage to organize themselves and do a really good job of it. But think of the difference between that and what we have now. The kind of communication we have now, the fact that there are cameras in phones now. So, and think about what people in Minneapolis are doing with those cameras and those phones. That was impossible. If you walked around Alabama in 1965, when we were doing voter registration work with a camera strapped on your chest, you'd get shot. That was the pure and simple thing of it. So we are living in a time, it's a horrible time in many ways, but we are also living in a time of tremendous positive resources that are available to us that we have created, that you are all part of, through the work that you do, whatever it is that make put us in a position where we can do, I think, much more than could be done before. And one thing for sure is, I don't think it can be destroyed. This is not going to get jackhammered away. It's not going to get bulldozed away. We might feel some pain, but the foundation is thick. It's spiritually rich. It's full of knowledge and has a technological base to it. So I am, if not, one thing I learned from the civil rights movement is not to be optimistic or pessimistic, because people told us it would take 1,000 years to change anything. And actually, some things changed very, very rapidly in ways that we all were surprised by. So, that was a wrong kind of pessimism. On the other hand, if we thought that that would last without problem, that would have been a little too optimistic because we can see what's happening today. So it's not a matter of being optimistic or pessimistic. It's a matter of, as Spike Lee said in the title of his movie, doing the right thing. That's why people were in the civil rights movement. If you had asked me back in 63, 65, were flying saucers going to land, or would a black man or woman be elected president of the United States, I would have said flying saucers would land first. That's how unlikely the other alternatives seemed. So uh, we have some very strong, positive foundation on which we are working. Somehow we have to make use of this, and it's making that use of it that I want to talk about tonight, because I know a group of men who are in perhaps one of the worst possible places to make good use of positive resources, and that's inside Soledad Prison as incarcerated men. Uh, these are men who have transcended basically their confinement through their intellectual determination and inner spirit of positive self-transformation that goes beyond the physical social boundaries that keep people confined there, and also keeps them apart. Because one of the things that happens in prison, but by the way, a lot of what I'm talking about in prison also happens in the world. It's just a more intense form of it, keeping people confined, but also keeping them apart. So the general pattern in prisons was, and still is in many places, black people over here, black men here, Latinos over there, whites over there, Asians here, Southeast Asians over there. People are not supposed to communicate. If you come from a certain part of the state, you don't communicate with people from the other part of the state, and that's the best of it. You might even be hostile and violent toward people from these different regions. So it's hard to get through that, and yet these men have done that. They sit together, they work together, they create projects together, and it's that cooperation in the midst of an environment that is really anti-cooperation that gives me tremendous hope. They're very inspiring to me. It gives me tremendous hope about what can be done. Before I proceed further with that, I want to honor my ancestors for just a few minutes, because it's through them that I'm here tonight talking about what I'm talking about. Uh, I realized, looking back on my life, I'm 83 years old, that I've been following my ancestors for a long time. It took me a long time to figure out that I was. I didn't know I was following them. Uh, my father's ancestors were from Madagascar. Uh, my ancestress, great grandmother, she had a few greats on there, uh, was on a French ship bound for France, part of a delegation from Madagascar. They were captured by English privateers. All the Madagascans on board were sold into slavery in the English colonies. That's how my father's family came to North America, not by choice, but by capture. The Childs family ended up in Marion, Alabama, uh, and which is where a young woman named Coretta Scott, who later became Coretta Scott King, was also from. Uh, and the Childs family was part of seven other black families that created one of the first schools for black children and for teachers to teach black people to teach other black people. It was called Lincoln Normal School. It's now called Alabama State University. It's part of the Alabama State University system. Uh, Coretta Scott King went to that school. So did one of my relatives, William Hasty, who became the first black federal judge in the history of the United States and was in the office of Franklin Delano Roosevelt during World War II and resigned from that position because of segregation in the military. That's part of my ancestry. My mother's family is Native American. Uh, we belong to the Massachusetts people. By the way, Massachusetts is an anglicized version of the real name, which is Massachusetts, which means Massa means big, Chus means hill, and Ut means place. So if you ask me where's John tonight, I'd say Santa Cruz Ut. Okay, yeah, this is the place I'm at. Um, uh, and that that taking, by the way, of the name along with the land, uh, really almost wiped us out. It didn't. The Massachusetts people still exist. We're still there. However, back in 1774, things got so bad that many of my ancestors, along with Native people from Connecticut, Rhode Island, all southern New England, went up north and were given use of land by the Oneida people and other Native people who were part of the great Iroquois Confederacy, the Haudenosauunee, whose ceremony I just read to you. And I'm going to say much more about them because they have a tremendous influence on me and my work, Transcommunality. Uh, and they created a community there called Brothertown. In our own language, it's called Iamwet, which means the place of equal people. And the idea of Brothertown was to get away from the oppression and to be able to recreate the farming, right? Those fields of the Three Sisters, places where people could have their own farms, their own homes, their own schools, and not be under the thumb of someone else. And that lasted for a while until the United themselves and the Haudenosaunee get pushed out more or less from that area and get caught up in neo-colonial politics and whatever else was going on there. I mention that to you because in many ways, Soledad Prison is my Lincoln Normal School, and it's my brother town. It's my place where I also, like my ancestors, in some small way, whatever small way I can, try to create an environment where there can be freedom to develop, freedom to grow, freedom to become fully human in an environment that might be doing something completely the opposite of that. So that I wanted to just basically say that about my ancestors, and I uh, I'm glad I know about them now. I didn't know about them 50 years ago. Let me just say a few words about the concept of transcommunality, because that's really crucial to everything else that I do. Transcommunality, well, let me put it this way. I the only thing I've really invented in this is the term transcommunality, and it's probably out there. I mean, I've looked for it in dictionaries. I can't find it. I think maybe I might be the first one to use it, maybe not. But uh, but the phenomenon of transcommunality is not my invention. Transcommunality, which is really about how the question and the answer, how do we work together when we are really different and have differences, and yet at the same time must work together if we are to survive? That's what transcommunality is about, working together while being different. And that basic aspect uh, came to me as I read about the Haudenosaunee over many years. I didn't know, actually, I didn't know what I was reading because it was just interesting. I didn't realize I was reading about people with whom I was connected. By the way, my family, they went up north to the United Country, married it into the United. So I'm also connected to the United people and so on. Here's the story. The Oneida, the Haudenosaunee history, and this is going to be very short. Their own history goes, is ceremonial in many ways and can go on for a long time. But back in about 1370, 1380, we don't know the exact date, there were five nations, there still are five nations, in what's now called upstate New York, the Mohawks near what's now Albany, the Oneidas, the people whom the southern New England Native people went to as refugees, uh, going west, and then the Onondagas near Lake Ontario in the middle of New York, upstate New York, the Cayugas, and then the Senecas on Lake Erie near what's now Buffalo, New York. Their own history tells us that they were at war with each other, all of them. And it was a vicious war of retribution, revenge, that just could not stop. No one thought it could stop. And it was just assumed that people would kill each other and kill each other in horrible ways, as people do in war. One day, a man appeared. He came by canoe from the north. He spoke their language, a little bit different, a little kind of, different accent. Uh, but he came in a stone canoe, actually, which people marveled at. A stone could float. When he got out, the first person he went to was a very important woman named Jingasase. And he went to Jingasase because she was so significant in that area. She was a neutral, and she gave food to the warriors who passed between east and west to kill each other. So he knew that he had to go talk to her. So he did what I was talking about. He went and asked permission to come in. She welcomes him, gives him some food first because you always we can't do it here. Actually, you guys are kind of doing it with the beer and the Steins, but mostly people ate and then talked. Uh, uh, when he's finished, she says, "So what is your message?" And he responds, "My message is I come from the Creator with a message of life for people. Thinking will replace killing. We shall live together in one long house, and work is one while being many. We shall have peace." And I thought it was very interesting that he actually says, she said, thinking will replace killing. I mean, he could have said peace will replace killing. That would make sense. Uh, but in other words, rationality will replace the emotions that have gone into that horrible war that was going on. And her answer was brilliant. I mean, she's just great. I love her. She says, "Your words are good, but what form will your words take when they come to work in the world?" So now, basically, nice idea. How are you going to do it? And he does have an answer. Now, in the real Haudenosaunee way of telling this story, again, that goes on quite a while, uh, but I'll give you the really short version. The Haudenosaunee, by the way, means people of the longhouse. People lived in longhouses, family which had family compartments, and the length depended on how many families lived in them. Each family was independent, autonomous, had its own way of doing things. But if there was a problem with the house itself, like a hole in the roof, everyone had to get together to fix it. So he said, we can be like the longhouse. He said, the Mohawks can be the keepers of the eastern door. The Senecas can be the keepers of the western door, and the Onondagas can be the keepers of the central fire. In other words, he used this brilliant metaphor, which everyone understood immediately because they all lived in longhouses, that the five nations that were fighting each other could actually be like compartments of one house. By the way, Martin Luther King has a kind of a vision of this with a term he calls the world house. It's worth looking at in his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? And, but she's right. Yeah, it's not enough to have the good idea. You, you have to be able to do the good deed to make the idea real. And she helps him, as does a man named Hiawatha, not the Hiawatha of the Longfellow poem, who Longfellow just mangles everything and takes it out of context. But there really was a Hiawatha or Ayinthawa, depending on which dialect you use. Uh, the three of them basically go from nation to nation with a message of peace using the longhouse metaphor. And what they find is that most people are tired of war. Most people are tired of the killing. Most people are tired of the violence. They're tired of the fear. So when there's a way to do it, as long as other people are doing it too, they are willing to accept it. They have one problem at the end. They've gone to four of the nations, not the except for the Onondaga in the center, near what's now Syracuse. And the head of the Onondaga is a man named Tadadaho. And Tadadaho basically means the man with the snakes in his hair. Tadadaho has rattlesnakes in his hair. He's a bad man. I mean, he's a really bad guy. He can kill you from a distance. He doesn't need to use bow and an arrow, spear. Uh, so he's a very powerful, magical, what we would call magical. They had another term for him. And so people say the thing that people say to Deganawidah is, don't go to him. I mean, yeah, we want peace, but don't go to Idaho because he'll kill you. And the Deganawidah, the peacemaker says, no, no, I have to go to him. He is exactly the person we have to talk with. And he is the one who has to be the leader of any kind of peace that is real if this is going to work. So eventually they get to talk to him. He drives them away by blowing on the waters of Lake uh, Ontario and creating storms. And there's a whole series of things he does to stop them from coming. But eventually they do come. And as the Iroquois story says, the Haudenosauunee story says, they comb the snakes from his hair and they make his mind straight so that he can see clearly. And Tadadaho changes, transforms, and becomes a warrior for peace rather than a warrior for death. He's still a warrior, by the way, a strong warrior man, but he's a warrior for peace. And with Tadadaho coming in, that creates what becomes known as the Great League of Peace, the Five Nations, and that exists today. I mean, they got chewed up by the French and the English and the wars between the French, the English, and the Dutch, all that. But there still are the Five Nations. Some of the still are remnants of the Five Nations in New York State. There's a Five Nations in Canada outside of Toronto. There's a Six Nation from the South, the Tuscarora, that joined in the 1700s. But the peace was made. Now, but here's the best part of it. And here's what's been so significant for Soledad Prison. The Deganawidah created a huge set of protocols about how to maintain the peace. Not just how to stop the war, but how to maintain peace and social conduct, how to work together, how to be compassionate, how to care about others, how to help people. And these protocols were passed on by oral history, what today we would call oral history, and eventually get written down. And it is the written down form of the protocols that I ran into many, many years ago at University of Massachusetts Amherst in the early 1960s. And that's when I began to be aware of them. And it's these protocols that form the basis of what I call transcommunality, which is basically how do we work together, even if we have disagreements, even if we don't like each other, how do we work together and still be able to be human beings and care about each other? That's what those protocols are. And they're all written down. They're very clear. So I say that to say that I'm not the inventor of transcommunality. It's a phenomenon. If anyone was a creator of it, it was Deganawidah. I'm just a messenger passing on his message. Um, and my little bit that I contribute to all this is to try to shape them in a way that they can be used, like say by the men in Soledad Prison, so that they're because the whole protocols are about uh, the size of the Encyclopedia Britannica. I mean, so they're kind of hard to pick up and go to the one you want. So I have made an effort, and it's been fairly successful, I believe. I've been told it is, to put these in a form, using also a book called The White Pine Tree Roots of Peace by a man named Wallace, who did a great job with them, and now can offer these to uh, the men in Soledad as well as to other parts of the world where I've these talks on how do we work together. Let me give you two examples of some of these protocols. And probably, I bring out these two because these are the two that the men in Soledad really emphasize over and over again. Um, One is the importance of words and deeds, that good words are not enough. I mean, you have to have them, but you have to do them as well. So there's always the practical sense of doing good. And do the right thing means really, the emphasis there, underlined, is do. And then it's the right thing. Right? Underline that too, I guess. But do the right thing. The second protocol is what I call constructive disputing. You could call it constructive disagreement too. And there's actually there's quite a bit of literature out there under that title, constructive disagreement. But constructive disputing is what Deganawidah really built his whole peace agreement around. And basically, it is a form of thinking that recognizes that when you have real diversity, you're going to have real disagreement. So I'm not, I celebrate diversity. Okay, fine. I mean, I do. But when you have something that's more than just cosmetic diversity, I mean, diversity of where people are thinking really different things, sometimes things that are opposed to each other, that's real diversity. And when you have real diversity, you're going to have some of that somewhere, somehow. And the Deganawidah knew that. And so he was concerned with how do we deal with the fact that people are going to really disagree on significant issues, not issues you can just kind of just ignore. Um, the Haudenosauunee, in a metaphoric but also very accurate view of this, was a council coming together to solve a problem that could not be solved because people were having arguments about it. And in that case, as they said, they covered the fire, put it out, and walked away. Now, here's the interesting thing. Back in the 60s, I remember doing not to put groups down, but one of our weaknesses was that there were groups that thought they had the answer to everything. This group thought, well, we know how to make things better, you don't. So we're going to disagree with you, and we don't want you in the room. Or someone else would say, I don't want to be in the room with you. Uh, There'd be those kinds of disagreements. This kind of covering the fire disagreement was very different, however, because what it assumed was that there was also love and mutual respect among the people who were disagreeing on that key issue. And then number two, there would be other key issues that had to be resolved. So those same people would have to come back to solve those issues. So the fire would be rekindled and the conversation begins again on a different issue. And if you can't work out one, there's plenty of problems, plenty of issues to go around. Uh, and everyone knows something, no one knows everything. And so we can work together. Uh, but it has to be done with mutual respect and a sense of mutual appreciation of each other, said the peacemaker. And that's constructive disputing. And of all the protocols that I've seen work so well in Soledad Prison, constructive disputing is that one. Uh, the men inside say, because they really do come from a lot of different viewpoints. And they also have backgrounds, they've transformed themselves. They've made themselves into better people. They are the Tadadahos who have combed the snakes from their hair. Uh, and I don't claim any thing that in my doing that. They've done that for themselves, but I've been able to with my co-workers, Nani Alejandros and Barrios, Flora Liu at College 10, John R. Lewis College, Bruce Shum in physics, and now Kim Lau in the provost of John R. Lewis College, and Roberta Schweers and the civilian staff at Soledad Prison, so many others. I don't mean to leave anyone out. I just can't give it the whole list. But there are many, many moving parts in this. And the key moving part is this group called Cemanahuac. Cemanahuac, by the way, is a Nahuatl indigenous name that means one world. And the men inside, who were some of them, many of them were my students in my early transcommunality classes. They're now all teaching the classes. So I'm not actually teaching there anymore. They're teaching, which is pretty good because I'm 83 years old. It's a long ride to Soledad and back. You leave at 3 and get back at 11 o'clock at night when you're doing this kind of work. And there are other issues too, but they are the teachers, and they have developed this transcommunality beyond anything that I could have thought of through their work. This group is a key part of everything that's done. So there's a whole environment of people working together with respect and with appreciation. By the way, one of the things that I've noticed about being in Soledad, and I don't mean any, and I don't mean, I mean this, I don't mean any disrespect to academia. I mean, academia is my life. I've been in it since, I started teaching in 1975, not here, but back east. Uh, I've learned a lot and grew a lot through, and UCSC has been great. Just really great in terms of working with Barrios in Santa Cruz, working with the men in Soledad, which probably couldn't have done in Massachusetts. I don't quite see those possibilities there. So yeah, it's been great. But when I'm in Soledad, these are the two words I hear the most often. I love you. I love you, man. I appreciate you. Love and appreciation. And think about how many times you've heard that in academia, where someone says, I really appreciate what you just, what you're doing. Or I love you, brother. I love you, sister. You know, I hear that all the time there. And when people say it, they mean it. I mean, you don't say it and that you mean it. So it's that love, that appreciation, that mutual respect that the peacemaker was depending on when he created that Five Nation Great League of Peace and all those protocols that then I have basically been able to offer through my book, Transcommunality, to the men in Soledad, which they are using not only in the class, but for their own work. Uh, and that work means reaching out to other men. Those classes have probably now reached about, I'd say, almost 1,000 men in Soledad over the past X number of years, I think about 20 years, uh, about peacemaking, and especially the emphasis on nonviolence. By the way, how much time do I have now, roughly? Just to check. Because I can talk so long. I mean, I got to check myself.
Well,
Uh,
hi, John. We have about 40 minutes.
okay.
How much of that you want to devote to Q&A? It's up to
Yeah,
you.
yes, I do. So that's how about 10 more minutes?
Of
Does that
course.
sound okay?
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Okay.
And I'll
Okay.
ask people to start thinking of questions
Yeah,
while
okay.
I'm on.
Um, I just wanted to say a little bit about nonviolence, because nonviolence is a big part of what makes Cemanahuac really work in Soledad. And, this is not the whole population in there any more than it's the whole population of the world that wants peace. Uh, but it's a chunk of it. And the men inside, like Tadadaho, call themselves the peace warriors because it takes being a warrior to talk about peace and to do peace when there's hostility. So uh, nonviolence is obviously a key part of that. And one thing I did, one experience I had in the civil rights movement, and if you don't mind, let me just go back to that for just a moment. I was in a group that was marching to the state capitol to demand voting rights in Montgomery, 65. We went through a whole line of young men, white men, yelling that they were going to kill us. A woman from Detroit, Viola de Liozzo, had been killed a few days before, not far from where we were, while she was bringing food to people who were picketing. So, yeah, I mean, this is not rhetorical stuff. I mean, these are real threats. We left that area and we were walking through a white residential neighborhood just to get to the state house. And the door to a house opened. And I really thought I was going to see the business end of a shotgun come out. And I figured that was, no, that's it. It's the end of me. And probably everyone else who was standing right there. But it wasn't a shotgun. It was a white woman with a jug of ice water and some paper cups to give us ice water on that very hot day as we were walking by her house in an all-white neighborhood. I mean, she had a lot of guts. She had a lot of courage. She had a lot of heart. She had compassion. Uh, but I also think I didn't talk with her. I don't know what her name was. I mean, it was just a brief moment. But I'm convinced that because we were nonviolent, because we were able to do things without hurting other people, uh, that she felt comfortable, even though I'm sure her neighbors might not have felt comfortable about it, but she felt comfortable doing a good act like that. And there are some other stories that are similar to that from that era. You don't hear about them too much, but um, so the the men inside who used to be violent, who will tell you that. I mean, these are men who come out of violent, in most cases come out of very violent backgrounds, have transformed themselves, have been able to move far beyond that to what we're talking about right now. Uh, the ones who have gotten out, the recidivism rate is zero. No one goes back. No one's going back. And most of them are working in community organizations. There's a wonderful community organization in Southern California run by a young man named Van Jones, um, who called Locked In, that helps people who are getting out of prison, helps people in prison, helps families who have incarcerated parents, incarcerated children. Uh, there's another man who was incarcerated who went to University of Southern California, got an MA degree, and now does a drug rehab program, certified, et cetera, et cetera. So people are doing good work both in the prison to stop hostility, to create peace, and to doing it out in the world. And that brings me back to that solid foundation I was talking about at the beginning. Because out here in the world, you know what? We're, we're doing there's some bad things going on out here. It's not just going on in prison. It's not, it's not like, oh yeah, in prison, so yeah, it's really bad in there. Well, okay, I agree. It's really bad out here too. And there are people who lack compassion uh, and who lack caring for others. These guys care for others. They are compassionate. They have made that leap, and they are talking to young people out on the streets about that. Van Jones works with law enforcement in Southern California to try to bridge those gaps so that they can be more efficient and have real community partnerships and basically have a system in which we do things for each other rather than to each other. So I'd like to end by, if you don't mind, just reading a few statements from some of the students who took part in this program. I didn't want to end with just my words. They say things that I wasn't expecting them to say at all. Um, Here's one. I go home. This is a UCSC student. I go home so happy to share the new lessons and self-reflections you all have sent with me, and I'm excited to pass them forward. Here's another. Our conversations healed my soul and reminded me, these are UCSC students, reminded me of the reasons why I'm passionate about this work. Another UCSC student, our conversations have been honest, rewarding, and so crucial as to how I will continue to move in the world. And here's a Soledad student. And by the way, all the students get UC credit, course credit for this, thanks to Flora Liu, who worked with University Extension. So we get course credit for everyone. It's not just the UCSC student. So it's a two-part class. Here's a Soledad student. He said, in this class, we weren't viewed as monsters, but as human beings. That's a big one. We weren't viewed as monsters, but as human beings. Another Soledad resident says, my experience of this class was by far one of a kind. Another Soledad student, I was deeply touched by the sincerity and empathy shown by these wonderful souls, meaning the UCSC students whom he met there. And another Soledad student says, we embraced our similarities, we respected our differences. That's what Cemanahuac Cultural Group is about. That's what Transcommunality is about. And finally, the chair of Cemanahuac, Ramon Moore, a remarkable young man, said, the energy, kindness, and insight that was brought to each class reminded me of how meaningful it is to learn from and grow with others. That's from Soledad, people incarcerated in Soledad. So those are words of our students here in UCSC, and I would say our students there in Soledad. And by the way, we all refer to each other as relatives, the relatives. And that's my story. I forgot. I should have mentioned this. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Sorry. Uh, uh, we do have fortunately, we have an endowment. It's a small endowment, but we do have an endowment that's ours, the Transcommunality Endowment. And we use this to rent vans from the university to take students to Soledad and back and to print out the readers for the course. That's it. I mean, it's small stuff. for most people. For us, it's big stuff. So anyone who would like to help us with that financially is welcome to do so. I mean, it's our endowment. It's part of the university, but we run it, and it helps keep the program going because we need those vans to get down there and back, and we need to print out those course readers so that people can read the material, talk with each other, and have the kind of outcomes that I've just read quotations from. Okay, let me just say thank you. And I'll say it in my own indigenous language, Katapatash, Netapak. Thank you, cousins. This is great. And let me also applaud you because it takes a lot to be looking at Zoom at 7 o'clock at night on a Monday. I keep thinking it's Friday. I mean, God, this is Monday, and uh, you are part of this foundation, this deep, rich, growing foundation of justice and pro-democracy activism. And just by being here tonight, just by being willing to hear and listen, and I hope speak, if you have the chance to do so. And by the way, you can always get in touch with me through email, jbchilds@ucsc.edu anytime. I'm always glad to respond to people. Uh, but you are part of the positive foundation that I talked about at the very beginning of this. And your being here tonight is evidence of that. It's your words and your deeds. Your deed is being here. So thank you. Katapatash.
Well, thank you, John. I think that's interesting. I don't think we've thanked our audience before. I want to thank you for bringing that to my awareness as well. Yeah, thank you everybody for being here. Um, I'll take this chance. I'd like to encourage the audience to ask questions. As Kelsey said, type them in the Q&A box. You can also upvote other people's questions, and we'll ask those sooner. But I think I'll start with one of my own questions. I'm wondering if you can just give us a little bit of background. A lot of us may not know that much about Soledad Prison, about where it is, what kind of inmates are there. And I'm curious about how you first became involved in this project.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm imagining an initial group at Soledad. How did you, especially I want to know, like,
Yeah,
how did you comb the snakes out of the hair of that
yeah.
first group of people you
Well,
worked with?
actually, here too, uh, just like I can't claim to have invented transcommunality, I didn't invent the idea of going to doing these classes. The idea for doing classes on transcommunality came from inside the prison system. It came from one of the men I met with Nani Alejandras about Unidos. We had a meeting, it's been a while now, 1993, 1992, at a prison that was called DVI, excuse me, DV, yeah, God, DVI in Tracy. It's now closed. And it was a very interesting meeting because it was a group of Black and Mexican American, brown, whatever term you want to use, incarcerated men, two groups. One was the Mexican American Cultural Committee, the other was the African American History Committee. And they were working together, which was very unusual. I mean, just totally unusual. And they were doing transcommunality. You see, without the word, without the concept, they were doing it. So it's in that sense also that it's a phenomenon. Um, but they asked me what I did, and I kind of gave them a version of what I just talked about. I didn't know as much about it then. And afterwards, the chair of the Mexican American Cultural Committee came up to me. He's a wonderful guy, Ernie Barrera, who unfortunately died of a disease in prison. But he said, "Why don't you teach this course here?" I said, "What?" I mean, it just it hadn't occurred to me. I didn't think of it, but Ernie did. He said, we'd like to hear more about this. We could use this. And the idea of doing the courses in Soledad with UCSC students came also from inside the prison system, from Enrique Rivera, who came up to me one day after a class that was just, basically me, some other teachers, and Soledad incarcerated men. He said, hey, what about getting some UCSC students here to be part of the class? And I thought, oh my God, I can't even begin to imagine what the bureaucracy would be like to get through to do that. I was picturing all the problems immediately. He said, no, he says, you got to try it. Maybe we can do it. So, and we did. And thanks especially to Flora and Bruce Schum, who really led the way working with the intricacies of the university system. Uh, but that was both the idea of teaching in the prisons came from in the prisons. So I give them all the credit for it. Now, at the same time, I've I've always been a person who has tried very hard not to judge people on the basis of what they look like, what they've done in the past, but rather try to be supportive of whatever good they're trying to do in the present. Um, my high school, what do they call him, advisor told me I was not college material and I should just get a job in a garage or something like that. Yeah. And I learned from that too. Say, dang, damn, excuse my language. What does she know? I mean, and there's an irony in this. My first job was at Yale University in Afro-American Studies and Anthropology, and my parents lived in Amherst. So I was back visiting them one day, and I was walking down the street, and there was my guidance counselor from the high school walking toward me. And she said, "Oh, John, what are you doing these days?" I said, "Well, I'm teaching at Yale." That's all. I didn't have to say, I mean, I wasn't nasty about it, but it was fun. It was fun. I have to admit it. But it was a good example of why not to predict what people are going to be, but rather to try to help them to do the best in their lives, if it's possible to provide that help. So that's been my basic approach, and that's what when they said, "Why don't you do this in class? Do these do the classes in the prison? Have you CSC students here?" Once I got over the amazing creativity of the idea and thought about it, I said, "Yeah, they're right. I should do it." And we did do it, and we have done it, and we are doing it.
That's wonderful, John. Thank you. And we have questions rolling in, so I'm gonna pop in with one. Uh,
Okay.
Joseph asks, what is one of your favorite things about Indigenous thought that you wish other people would know?
Ah, ah. Um, I would say compassion, broad compassion for the world, the living world of people, animals, trees, um, of everything that is, rather than compartmentalizing things off, separating things, thinking something is there for me to use only. It only makes sense if I can use it. So getting away from a use-based way of thinking to one in which we are connected, that we are part of. And so for me, I used to go for walks in the winter in Massachusetts with snowshoes, the ones that look like tennis rackets, you know, just tracking animals, not with a gun, but with a camera. Um, and, I'd be out there by myself and see a lynx or a fox and say, "Wow, hey, cousin, how you doing?" And I talk to the animals around here. I say, "Hey, cousin," cousin coyote, cousin crow. Um, some of them even talk back every now and then. At least I think they do. Uh, but anyway, it's that sense of connectedness. And I know some people might think, that's just kind of romantic and so on. But no, we are connected. And as a matter of fact, the scientists will tell you that we are connected. This is not just, but we figured that out thousands and thousands of years ago as native peoples. So I would say for me, that's probably a key sense of aspect of indigenous thought is connectedness with the world.
Well, thank you. And I want to thank Joseph for that question. Joseph Erb is a previous Slugs and Steins speaker,
Yeah.
I'm sure a buddy of yours.
If Joseph's there, let me show you something of his.
Uh,
This is a necklace that he made for me.
ah,
Uh, it's copper and it's got wampum beads. And copper, there are thousands of trade routes the indigenous people had before the arrival of the Europeans that covered the continent. And but in fact, Joseph, if ever we get a chance to do a map from Tierra del Fuego up to the Bering Strait, I bet we could find trade routes that connect all the way up there, and east, west, north, south. But the copper's from the Great Lakes. The beads are coastal beads made from seashells from the area where my tribe lives. And so Joseph was kind enough and generous enough, because he's a wonderful guy, to make this for me. He's a great artist. And it represents in many ways this kind of connectedness with nature and with each other. So thank you, Joseph. Katapadash.
yeah, thank you for being here, Joseph. We're honored to have you here. Just one quick comment. A reader named Stephen says, "Great to listen to a high school classmate. Thanks so much for what you have accomplished." So,
Oh,
if you know Stephen,
wow. That's going back some ways. Thank you.
yeah, thank you for that, Stephen. Now I'll ask a question from Alyssa. Lots of upvotes on this one. Given the political climate with ICE, the violence and confinement of people of color without legitimate cause, what are some ways that we can fight back? Do you have any lessons learned from participation in the civil rights movement that you can pass on to social justice warriors today?
Well, I don't have the answer, that's for sure. And it's a tough, horrible situation. But let me go back to nonviolence. I would say nonviolence is very effective. I mean, I know people think, nonviolence, how can you get anything done with that? One thing that was clear during the civil rights struggle was who was being violent and who wasn't.
Mhm, mhm,
That was crystal clear. And that really helped. It helped with that woman with the ice water for us, but it also helped eventually to get certain things done that were positive because people knew that we were not the ones out there trying to cause harm. It was the people in charge who were trying to cause harm and were causing harm, uh, including murder. So I would say it's hard to be nonviolent. I mean, it's really difficult, and that emotion that the peacemaker tried to get away from, thinking will replace killing. We have to hold on to our thinking, our rationality, with the understanding that it is effective. And even though it's very, very difficult to do it, I think that seeing violence being done to someone is very different from doing violence to someone. And I saw a lot of violence and I experienced violence in the South. I never committed violence. Uh, and I'm glad of that. I mean, I can look back and say, I know who did that, man. It wasn't me. And it does have I think it does have a political effect, a positive political effect. And that's what the people in Minnesota are doing. I mean, they are being nonviolent. I mean, they're that kind of work where they're helping each other, bringing food to people, taking kids home from school, walking, protecting them. All that, there's nothing violent about that. Um, I mean, I know it's the guy who threw the sandwich at the at the border patrol guy in DC. I don't consider that to be particularly one of the worst forms of violence in the world. But there's very little of that even. I mean, Minnesota and Minneapolis are very interesting in the sense that they are really smart and really disciplined. And we were very disciplined about nonviolence. Anyone who was violent, we just said, no, no, we don't want you. We needed that nonviolent. They are doing the same thing. And I think the way in which they are reaching the world for many reasons, but one of the reasons they're reaching the world is because they are nonviolent, and the ones who are being violent, it's not them. So that would be, a partial, very, very partial answer.
Thank you for that, John. We have a question from Angel. Hi, Angel. This particularly excites me because it has to do with UCSC. But Angel asks, what would you want to see on UCSC's campus that honors our Indigenous relatives, either in art, picture, or words?
Oh, well, first of all, there's only one angel I know on campus. Angel Rio Tutar, head of the American Indian Resource Center, who's an amazing person. Um, I would say, first of all, pay attention to what they're doing at the American Indian Resource Center, because Angel does she and the center put together some amazing events. For example, they put together a powwow last year, first powwow we've had in years, and it's going to be another one this year. So there's that kind of event. And if you want to get just a feel for indigenous culture, humor, we like to laugh a lot, man. I mean, I'm taking language classes with my tribe, but most of the time we're cracking jokes and laughing. So, but uh, I would say check out the American Indian Resource Center for sure. Here's another thing that they're doing, which will happen in April. Uh, One of my tribal members, Tracy Eastman, just a wonderful person, a leader of the Massachusetts tribe. She lives in California, but she goes back and forth to Massachusetts all the time doing tribal work. She and a wonderful linguist, a woman from South, whose family is from South India, named Sandhya Narayan, who has helped us revitalize our language so that I can now speak it in a way that I couldn't 3 years ago. Uh, they will be here in April to talk about language revitalization among indigenous peoples through the American Indian Resource Center. So keep an eye out for that. I think learning more is absolutely about Native peoples is absolutely essential because there's so much misinformation would be a polite way to put it, but there's so much misinformation and lack of understanding out there that I think and here we have an opportunity through that group and also the Indigenous Faculty Network, which is a group of Indigenous faculty here at UCSC. So and the classes they teach. I mean, I would check out the IFN website, Indigenous Faculty Network website. Uh, uh, and I think you'll find there's actually quite a bit going on. It's a matter of knowing about it and taking part in it. Thank you, Angel. I love you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. We have about 15 minutes, and we've got 3 or 4 more questions. I think we'll be able to get through these. Next question is from Vicky. I would love to hear more about the protocols you use, particularly about how you deal with serious disagreements within the program. Thank you. I love you, cousin.
Oh, great. I love you too, cousin. Um, well, I think there are some how shall I put this? There are precursors to having uh, disagreements not turn into something really bad. And the precursors are something we've talked about already, which am glad to talk about again anytime, is mutual respect is very important. Having mutual respect, regardless of what else was going on, is absolutely vital. Look, I'm 83 years old. My wife is, I won't tell you her age, but she ain't young. She's younger than I am, but she ain't young. Um, and we've been married since 1977. That's a long time, long enough to have had a lot of arguments. We really have had arguments and disagreements, and she likes one kind of thing, I like another. We didn't like, I like this, she didn't like that. We've gone back and forth, back and forth. We've had our ups, we had our downs. It's a relationship. But we love each other and we respect each other. And this means that no matter what the argument is, no matter even if we say, well, that's it. I mean, you go to that movie, I'll go to this movie. I mean, whatever it is, we'll do it differently, but it won't get in the way of our love for each other, and it will not get in the way of our mutual respect for each other. Um, so if you have that, I think that has to be in place to make the other part work, the disagreement part work. And it's hard. I mean, I say this like it's like a formula, but it's not. I mean, it's because the emotions get involved. You like something, someone else hates it. Boy, that's really. Now, I should point out one limitation on everything I'm saying. There are some limits to how far transcommunality and constructive disputing can go. I'm not going to have a discussion with a Nazi, for example. I'm not going to have a discussion with a Ku Klux Klan member who wants to get rid of me, for example. People who want to get rid of me, I'm not going to talk to. I mean, there are people on beyond because they don't have that mutual respect. They don't love me. They don't respect me. However, if it's someone who says, I used to be a Nazi, but I have gotten away from that. What do I do now? How do I help? How do I get out really out of this? How do I move in a really different direction? That person I'll talk with. Right? So I just want to make sure that I'm not presenting some kind of uh, super universal kind of way of being because there are limits to it. I mean, someone who wants to kill me or get rid of me or doesn't, there's no conversation there. But if there's another way to do it, if they can get away from that, then the other disagreements we can work on.
Thank you. This one is from Raja, and he says a group of us in the astronomy and astrophysics department and other departments at UCSC have been teaching pre-algebra, algebra, and introductory astronomy at Santa Cruz County Jail in a program called Project for Inmate Education. And they'd love to follow up with you to explore any possible synergy between your work and theirs. So can I go ahead
Oh,
and just put your email in for them?
yes, please do.
Will do.
Please do. That's great. That's great. Because, the relatives inside Soledad, Bruce Hume gave a talk on black holes years ago, and they loved it. Man. People loved it, man. They were great questions. And then Flora Lou gave a talk about her anthropological work. And I remember someone saying, so what's the word for love there? So, no, people, the relatives inside are very serious. I mean, you give them something to read, they'll read it, and they'll read it and think about it and talk about it, and they'll come back at you with questions, and you better be ready because the questions can be very tough. So they're serious students, really good students, really serious students. So I'm glad to hear about this. I didn't know about it. I think it's wonderful. Congratulations to you for doing it, and please do get in touch, and maybe we can work out a trip to Soledad.
Well, and Vicky's question about the protocols, I wonder if there's a chance to give a if we could give a little plug for your book, right, for people who want to learn more and learn all about what you're teaching. How
Oh
do we do
yeah,
that?
yeah. I should have brought a copy of it. It's in the other room. I don't think I want, but it's called Transcommunality, which is just it's just a basic word, transcommunal across communities, from the politics of conversion to the ethics of respect. And the conversion there that I was thinking of is not actually religious conversion, it's political conversion. So the idea of getting away from the idea that one group has the answer to everything and the rest of us don't. So getting away from that to being respectful of the fact that everyone knows something, no one knows everything. Uh, so, but the main title of the book is Transcommunality. It was put out by Temple University Press in 2003. It's still available. I mean, I can say I still buy copies of it every now and then. Uh, so it's around.
Hmm, wonderful. Yeah, I'm going to go pick up a copy. I think so. Anybody who wants to learn more, that's where we can learn everything.
And by the way, one of the things I do in that book, just so you know, is I didn't want to have a monologue about dialogue.
Mhm.
So it's actually a kind of a hybrid book. The first half is by me, and the second half is many different voices talking about what I've said.
Hmm, hmm.
They like it, they don't like it. One writer says, well, it's a great idea, but I can't picture this working for anything other than really small groups, for example. But that's what I wanted. I didn't want to just have me talking about just all talk together. What, I mean, so it actually has many other people in it, in a kind of a dialogue, as much of a dialogue as you can get in a book.
Yeah, thank you. Um, so I think the last question we have here, unless any more come up, question from Ryan. And it says here, Ryan already had to leave us, said, thank you for your time, Mr. Childs. I'm at a public library, got to get going. Thank you again. So Ryan, I hope that you're watching the rest of this on YouTube later. And thank you for
Yeah,
your
right.
question.
Like you say, you can always get in touch with me, in
Yep.
my email address, and we can
Yeah.
communicate that way.
So Ryan would like to know, what do you think about the interim housing, transitional housing, and nonprofit organizational structure for sustainable living standards in big cities, i.e. Los Angeles and New York? If you have some background or thoughts on that topic.
Well, it's not an area I am in any way a specialist on, but darn, there was a story from the 1600s of three native people who, well, they were kidnapped, actually, of course, like a lot of people were, by the French, someone in France, and they were walking around Paris, and one of them said to the Frenchman they were with, he said, "Why are there so many poor people here? Why are the people begging for food? Don't people have enough food? Don't they have? Why are they sleeping on the streets?" Um, and uh, it is just an outrage and a totally unnecessary contradiction on the US society, our economy, the modern economy, that there is not enough appropriate housing, food security for people, for everyone who lives here. We could do it. We could do it. I mean, there are banquets that go on in in some places. I won't mention. I mean, like Washington D.C., for example, but banquets that they cost millions just for one night. So I think this is not a case where we lack the resources. It's a case where there's a resistance to the distribution, the redistribution of the resources. And anything that can be done for that is part of this larger foundation that I mentioned at the very beginning. If you and it's certainly one of the really big issues. It has come up in Soledad because when those guys get out, they have to live somewhere, right? And they wonder about that. They worry about that. I mean, imagine being in prison and knowing that, okay, you get out, that's great. Now what do you do? Where do you live? Uh, Nani Alejandros and Barrios Unidos have been great at helping people, building tiny houses and so on, but we need so much more. And I wish there were more going on right here in Santa Cruz that was like that.
Well, thank you. Kelsey, do you have any final question?
I don't think so.
Okay, I think we're right on time here. That doesn't happen too often where we're perfectly out of questions. So I would. This has been an amazing conversation. Let's have a big round of applause for Professor Childs. If you'd like to just say a quick thank you, you can type that in the Q&A box, and he'll get all of those after the talk. So feel free to pop your thanks in there.
You too. Hey, I hope.
Yep, Stan. Thank you, everybody. So, um, just as an introduction, as Kelsey mentioned before, my name is Mike Reapy. I'm another one of the volunteers who organized Slugs and Steins. I want to thank the audience for being here, and thank you, John, for an amazing evening, very thought-provoking. And I did check, your book is on Amazon right now. So
yeah, okay.
I'm gonna.
I wish it was somewhere else, but yeah, it is there, and you can't. I have to use it. Unfortunately,
go to Bookshop Santa Cruz if you can.
Yeah. You can do that. You can do that. Yep. It
Okay.
used to be a great bookstore, the Literary Guillotine, run by David Watson. That would be the place I would go.
Yep. Go to your local bookshop if you can, but it is available online.
But anyway, yeah.
So just in case anybody's asking, once again, this talk was recorded. It will appear in a few days on UCSC's Arts, Lectures, and Entertainment channel on YouTube, so you can share that, share this experience with people you know. We appreciate you watching. I'd also like to thank the staff of the Alumni Engagement and Special Events offices who helped us organize this webinar. Thank you, Shana, Nicole, Diana, and Paulina. Also, thanks to April Yee and Julia Doloff, who are other volunteer organizers for this series. You'll see them again soon. In the meantime, we will be sharing information about the March Slugs and Steins. That'll be announced on our email list hopefully very soon. So we hope you join us then. In the meantime, there are some upcoming events I'd like to share with you. This is my personal list that I'd like to go to. First up, this year's Peggy Downs Baskin Ethics Lecture will be held on February 12th in person at the Hay Barn. It's featuring Marion Nestle. She'll be discussing sustainable food in the Trump era. On February 19th at 5:30, UCSC is hosting an in-person networking event at the UC Extension office in Silicon Valley. It's called Slugs at Sundown. The guest speaker will focus on strengthening your professional brand. Free headshots and refreshments will be available for attendees at that. The next CRAW lecture on science and technology will be at the Silicon Valley campus on March 4th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. and features Angela Brooks, professor of biomolecular engineering. She'll be lecturing on unmasking cancer's complete genetic code. And that discussion will be moderated by Alex Wolf, the Dean of Baskin School of Engineering. And finally, the 7th annual UCSC Deep Read program was recently announced by the Humanities Institute. Hopefully you've seen those emails. The book is called Entangled Life: How Fungi Make Our Worlds, Change Our Minds, and Shape Our Futures by British mycologist Merlin Sheldrake. Events are already underway with fungus February events at the Santa Cruz Museum of Natural History all month. The first faculty salon will be held on May 19th at 6 p.m. And you can find these events and more on UCSC's calendar at calendar.ucsc.edu. So on behalf of the UC Santa Cruz Alumni Association, thank you for joining us, and please come back for our March Slugs and Steins. Good night, everybody.